Today, we're going to hear the story of Rocktune, the detective raccoon with a polka dotted knife. And this story, specifically, is Rocktune's big adventure. It starts at the time of year when the Earth is turning away from the sun a little bit sooner every evening. And so the nights are growing longer. And Rocktune is hanging out with her good friend Totally Turtle, as they often do in the evenings around that time of the day when Rocktune's just kind of waking up for the night, getting ready for whatever she's going to do that night. And Totally Turtle's starting to get kind of tired and is going to go to sleep soon. And so they overlap at this time and they like to get together and sing some songs. So they're jamming. You can hear that deep hum of Rocktune's bass that she always plays. And Totally Turtle is either hitting some drums or playing guitar. And so the night is starting to fall, and Totally Turtle says, "You know, Rocktune, it's about that time of year for me. The ponds are starting to freeze up, and I'm going to go down under the water, under the ice, and just kind of chill out for a while." And Roctune's like, yeah, I knew you were going to say that soon. And, I'll miss you. I'll miss you, TT. That's what she sometimes called Totally Turtle for short, TT. I'll miss you, TT, but I'll see you in spring. And Totally Turtle said, "Totally," and just turned slowly, walked off toward a nearby pond. And this happened every year, but this year, for Rocktune, it felt different. She just, she was thinking that she didn't want to just wait around this winter, doing what she did every other winter, waiting for Totally Turtle to come back in the spring. And so she went out for a walk to go sit on top of the hillside, one of her favorite places where she could look out across a field and see there was like a train track that went off in the distance that she could see. And when she was sitting there this night, she heard the rumbling of the train coming on the tracks, and she heard it toot toot in the distance. And she thought, I wonder where that train is going. And I wonder if I could go there too. Only one way to find out. And as the train came into sight, she started to devise a plan for how to get on that train. Now there was a telephone pole with a telephone wire from the hill she was on. It went down the hill and went right over where those train tracks are. And as that train came, she had to think quickly because the train just keeps on chugging along. And without thinking too much about it, she just, before she knew it, she had her polka dot knife out in her hand with the sheath still on so she didn't cut herself. And she just threw it up over the telephone wire, and she just rode it like a zip line down the hill. And then she could see the train. She was like starting to get over the train, but there was like all these just hard roofs basically of the train cars. And she was like looking for a place to land, but nothing looked good. And as she was, there's like a telephone pole coming. She's gonna smack right into it. She doesn't get off the zip line soon. She's way too high up to just drop off. So she's looking. She's getting toward the front of the train. Didn't see anything yet, and then she spotted it. A train car that was like open. It was a cargo train, so it was just like carrying some kind of material across the country. And she spotted the one that was open, and so she aimed for that one. It was kind of like off to her side, so she started swinging a little bit as she's swinging, and then she swung and right at the right moment, let go, sheathed her knife in the air, and then landed like a tumble into this open train car on this cargo train. She landed with a thud. And she was like, wow. And the train was chugging along. And she had this moment of like panic, like, oh no, what did I do? And then she heard something. Like just a little rustling kind of thing. And she saw something move over in the corner of this train car. And it was like, she saw it was sort of like a pale, like furless looking tail that like kind of whipped around into the darkness. And then she saw a little nose stick out. And she knew someone else was there. And she said, hello? And somebody said, who's there? Hey, who's there? And she said, I'm Rocktune. I come in peace. And then out from the shadow came a little long nose, sharp looking teeth, little beady black eyes, small ears, and a long naked tail. And then a voice said, I'm Polly Possum. Nice to meet you. And that's how Rocktune met Polly Possum. And Rocktune said, well, I sure am surprised to see somebody else in this train. And Polly Possum said, you're telling me. And then they just started chatting. They were both pretty friendly with each other, thankfully. And Rocktune was like, where did you come from? And Polly said, well, I'm from the city, from New York City. And I was there with a sort of possum posse. And you know, we did what possums do. We were going around getting into trash, getting into all the dumpsters, and just, you know, making do with whatever we could find. But some of my posse members were getting into some stuff that I didn't really agree with, you know. I thought we had enough food in the trash, but some of us were getting kind of hungry because people are composting a lot more now, and so there was not as much to find in the trash cans. So, people started going, some of the possums started going into people's backyards and finding their gardens and just digging up some food. And, well, my brother Paulie, he even went into the chicken coop. And that really caused a ruckus in there. He was just looking for some eggs. But, man, those chickens got their feathers all fluffed up over that, and somebody came out screaming at us, and we had to run out of there. And I just thought, you know what, this just isn't the life for me. So I decided to hightail it out of there on this train, and here I am. How about you? And Rocktune was like, well, I just live in a little town, and got plenty of food there and everything, but my best friend, Totally Turtle, well, every year, you know, he's a turtle, so he goes under the ice for a while and in the wintertime, and I always miss him. So I thought I would just go for an adventure this year. And Polly was like, that's right, an adventure. I always wanted to meet one of these guys. And Rocktune was like, well, here I am, and now you're my adventure buddy. And that was how Rocktune's big adventure started, with Polly Possum. And they were riding that train all over the country. They went to New Orleans, and because, you know, they're both pretty good dumpster divers, opossums and raccoons. And opossums have a much better sense of smell than raccoons, which was really useful. Rocktune was having a really hard time locating the good places to find food. But Polly was just following her nose somewhere. She smelled something so good. She was sniffing all around, Rocktune, this way, come on. And Rocktune's following Polly through the city at night, and then they see it. This big building that says Cafe du Monde on it, and that's where they make beignets. And beignets, if you don't know, are like these really yummy donuts, basically. And Polly was like, "Oh yeah, this is where it's coming from, for sure. It smells really strong now. Come over here." And so they went and they went out back where they have some dumpsters and they also have compost buckets for the food waste that they have. And in there were a bunch of beignets. They must have been maybe 2 days old or something, the things that they couldn't sell to people anymore. And so Rocktune and Polly just feasted on those beignets, and oh, they were so good. And then they went to, the train traveled on, went through the Midwest, where the train stopped one day, and they got out there, and they were looking around, and there just wasn't much out there. There were a lot of farms, but not a lot of places with the kind of food that they like to eat. So but what Rocktune did see was like something just that caught the sun in the distance, like a glimmer. And Rocktune was like, "Well, what's that over there?" Polly's like, "I don't know, it doesn't look like food." And Rocktune was like, "But it's shiny, let's go!" Rocktune loved shiny things. And so they were going off toward this like dumpster. It was kind of on this, looked like a farm. It was like a metal scrap dumpster, and there was just shiny stuff in there, and Rocktune just couldn't resist it. So they hop in, and there was like mirrors and like old car parts and old fans and just all kinds of metal trash. And Rocktune was like finding treasures. She was like, "Oh, these treasures, I'm gonna bring them back for my adventure." And Polly was like, "It's just a bunch of trash. It looks like trash. Come on, we gotta get out of here. The train's leaving." And sure enough, the train was just starting to pull away. So Rocktune was like, right. She grabbed whatever she could. And right as they were about to jump out of the dumpster, they heard, "Hold on, I'll be inside in a minute. There's something rummaging around the dumpster over here. I'm going to get it." And they were like, "Oh, no, what do we do?" And they were just about to jump out, and they could see a farmer coming toward them with a pitchfork in his hand. And they looked at each other and said, "He's going to get us. What do we do? What do we do?" And they went back to hide in the dumpster, but there were like mirrors in there as part of the trash. And so everywhere they went, they could still kind of be seen through some reflection of a mirror. So the farmer came down and was looking in there and was like, "I see ya!" And he threw his pitchfork right at Polly and Rocktune, and right when it struck, a mirror shattered, because in fact the farmer had thrown the pitchfork at the mirror, thinking it was the actual raccoon and the possum. And just as it smashed, Rocktune and Polly had scurried over to a corner of the dumpster where there was like a hole they could see, and they just snuck out the hole and ran toward the train. The train's like chugging off, it's starting to pick up speed now, so they're running as fast as they can. And since they went out the backside, the farmer didn't see them. And they're running, and they're not really that fast compared to trains. But they found like a little ring of a ladder sticking down, and they were able to grab onto that, and then like Polly grabbed on and then put her paw out to grab Rocktune, and so they're kind of like hanging off the side of the train like this for a little bit, and Polly's like, "Oh," Rocktune's like, "Climb up." Polly's like, "It's too hard, I can't." And then Rocktune just like climbed up to Polly really quickly and jumped up on the ladder, and then Polly grabbed onto Rocktune's back foot, and they climbed back up, and they got back to their cargo car where they were hanging out before, and they were like, "Whew, that was a close one. We need to be more careful." And Rocktune was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I got a thing for shiny stuff, and look at my train." She had like some broken pieces of mirrors and some other little pieces of scrap metal, and Polly was like, "Yeah, cool treasures, Rocktune. Whatever, float your boat. And then they just kept traveling on. They went to Chicago, where there was lots of pizza. And there was so much pizza that Polly's sense of smell was just overwhelmed. There was like pizza smell everywhere, and so she couldn't even find where the best spot to go was, because all she could smell was like pizza everywhere, and didn't know where there was actually like where it was just coming out from what people were eating, or where it was actually dumpsters that they could eat. But because Rocktune got really good feeling in her little raccoon paws, she was like, walking around trying to find the right spot. She could feel the little crumbs of pizza on the sidewalk, and she could follow like from where people were eating, and they tossed their crust into the trash or something, and so she was able to kind of find all the good pizza scraps around Chicago for them to eat. So in Chicago, they feasted on pizza. Then they went to out to Seattle, Washington, where there's Pike's Place, which is like the fish market. And oh boy, they both love fish. So they feasted on a bunch of fish scraps out there that they found when the markets closed in the evening, and all the pieces that the people had chopped off when they were selling the nice pieces of fish. They were just like kind of around on the ground, and they just ate so much fish. And then I don't know if any of you have ever been to Seattle, but there is a weird thing there called a gum wall, where people put gum that they chewed on. This is a real thing. They chew gum and put it on the walls there, and it's just in this one spot in the city. And Rocktune and Polly actually went there and licked the gum, because they're not scared of germs. So they licked the gum. They're like, oh, the pink one tastes like strawberry. Oh, the green one tastes like mint. And they tried like a bunch of different ABC gum, already been chewed gum. And then from Seattle, so the train just was going around stopping at all these places. And then it went to Texas. And in Texas, they got to eat barbecue. And they both loved barbecue. And one day, they were at this place, it was like this outdoor grill. And it was nighttime actually. And because they're both nocturnal, so it's convenient for them to be travel buddies. And they were out at this place, kind of like in a sandy setting, eating some like chicken, barbecue chicken that they found. And then Rocktune heard like this like rattling sound. And Polly was like, "Hey, Rocky." She liked to call her Rocky sometimes. Rocky, you could tell me we're not alone. And then, right when she said that, a rattlesnake came out from the shadows and just bit Polly. And Polly just went like, and just fell over, really still, and just didn't move. And then the rattlesnake like scurried off, and Rocktune was like, Polly, Polly, are you okay? And like shook Polly, and Polly just like didn't move a muscle. It was like frozen solid. And Rocktune was freaking out and started to cry, and was like, knew that snakes could be really dangerous. Didn't know much about rattlesnakes. There is one kind of rattlesnake in the Northeast where Rocktune is from, but she knew it wasn't good, basically. And then after a few minutes, Polly started to kind of like move again. It was several minutes. It was like almost a half hour later. And Rocktune was like, Polly, are you okay? And Polly was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Actually, I have a built-in defense for venomous creatures, and that rattlesnake doesn't bother me. Well, then why didn't you move? Why were you so still like that? Oh, that's just what I do when I get scared. Then the animals think I'm dead and they just leave me alone. That's just a thing we possums do. And Rocktune was like, Well, that would have been nice to know yesterday before you got attacked by a rattlesnake. Jeez, I thought you were dead. And Polly was like, yeah, I'm not dead. It's all right. Come on, let's keep going. We got a train to catch. Polly was like that, you know. Things didn't really faze her. She was from the city, so she was kind of just rough like that. So, uh, so then they were like, you know, this has been quite an adventure, but I think we should head back. And so they got on a different train this time, one that seemed to be heading back the direction that they wanted to go. Uh, and they were on the train for a long time, and it stopped once in a forest. And the forest started to look familiar to Polly and Rocktune. They knew they were probably getting close. They were able to find some familiar food for them, some grubs and slugs in that forest, and they were like, I think we're getting back toward the northeast. We're getting home. And so they went, continued on the train, and then the landscape started to look familiar to Rocktune. And she was like, I think we're getting near my home. Polly, are you going to go back to the city, or are you going to come back with me for a while? And Polly was like, yeah, I could check out your place for a little while. Thanks for inviting me. And so Polly and Rocktune got off the train in Rocktune's town. And it was springtime. And the Siberian squill were just starting to pop up, and all kinds of spring ephemerals. And Rocktune thought, you know what, I think Totally Turtle will be back soon. And meanwhile, Rocktune, while they were waiting for Totally Turtle to come back, Rocktune showed Polly some of her favorite places, like the candy store, where she got Pop Rocks at one time to feed the mice who really liked the poppy feeling in their mouth when they were, I don't know if you remember that story, but it was one with the Rocktune helped some mice who were like chewing on electrical wires that was messing up some guy's house because they liked the buzz of the way it felt on their tongue, and so Rocktune found some Pop Rock candy at the candy store so the mice could eat that instead. She also showed Polly the bakery where she stopped the chickens from kneading the dough, and their talons were getting stuck in the dough and then in all the village people's bread, which they really didn't like. So she showed Polly that. And then they were hanging out in Rocktune's oak tree one day when they heard a little knocking down at the bottom. And it was TT. Totally Turtle had come out from the semi kind of hibernated state that he'd been in, and they came down, and Totally Turtle was like, well, who's that? And Polly said, Polly, pleasure to meet you. And Totally was like, totally. And then they started playing some music together, and turns out that Polly was good at banging on like a plastic bucket with sticks like a drummer, so they had like a little band going for a little while. And then Polly said, you know, this has been nice and all, but I better be getting back to the city. You know, I miss my brother Paulie. I gotta just see what's going on over there. So thanks for having me, Rocktune, but I gotta go. Maybe I'll see you again someday. Rocktune was like, all right, Polly, thanks for coming. It's been a real pleasure knowing you. And she took Polly over to the hill where Rocktune herself got on the train, and she found like a nice solid stick for Polly to hold on to, and she showed her how to do it. Put it over the wire like this, and you slide right down, and you get right into the train, and then you're on your way. Then you're on your own, Polly. And so that's what she did. Bye, Polly. Totally Turtle was there too. See you later, Polly. Polly was like, wahoo! It They watched her land into the cargo train, and that was that. And they went back to the oak tree, and they went back to their jamming like they did. And it was springtime, and they had the whole year to hang out until the winter again. The end.